There is no death, or so says our guest today. We'll talk about it on this edition of the Paranormal Podcast. Welcome to the Paranormal Podcast. I am Jim Harold and so glad to be with you. And although we do know that there is physical death, I sincerely believe we go on. And I know our guest today does. And she says that she's found proof and she's going to share some of that proof with us today. And we're so glad to have her with us. Of course, I am talking about Suzanne Arens. She is an evidential psychic medium, and she is an award-winning author. And her latest is There Is No Death, Evidence of the Spirit World, Spirits and Orbs. And we're so glad to have her with us. And we want to thank her because we did this interview before, had a few tech issues. We wanted to come out as best as possible to get Suzanne's wisdom out there in the right way. So we appreciate her working with us to make it happen. Suzanne, welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So that's a big statement. There is no death. So explain, on the face of it, yeah, okay, there is no death. But really, can you get into what you mean by that?
It's the difference between someone that believes in heaven and maybe an atheist, right? The atheist doesn't think there's anything after our life here ends. And I can tell you it absolutely continues on. In fact, I talk a little bit about NDEs and SDEs in my book from Raymond Moody. He kind of coined that, but there's wonderful examples as well where people have died. Even the atheist stories are the best. They've died and ended up at a place they didn't know existed and met angels and people and had a life review. And then when the epiphany hits them that, oh my gosh, this is all real. And then they're told they have to go back. They're like, oh no, don't send me back. Don't put me back in that thing. So as soon as our soul leaves our bodies, we could care less about it. So no matter how vain you might be in this lifetime, once your soul departs from this wrapper that we're wearing, you're free and you go back into energy form. And that is what I'm actually able to capture in pictures and in video.
Wow. That's amazing. I want to talk about that more. I do want to talk about something you said, though, people who were very kind of non-believing, then having this experience and saying, I don't want to go back. So in some ways, is it fair to say, at least in some cases, that, you think of dying as a bad thing, but in their case, they thought of it as a positive experience. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. It's not that somebody can't have a negative experience, especially during your life review, which you all have, including animals. Animals have life reviews as well. It's really very entertaining. But that's where you learn and you feel what you've done to somebody. So if you were really sharp with the tongue or you physically punch somebody or you really hurt their feelings, you are put back in that exact scenario. You watch it all unfold, but you feel what that other person felt. And if you weren't such a great guy or gal in this lifetime and you were just always attacking people and making them feel awful and insulting people like the typical, corrupt man, those movies that are always so popular.
Right.
Well, when you pass back into spirit form, you might not enjoy it very much at first. And honestly, if you've been a POS in this lifetime, I'm pretty sure you're not going up. You might be going someplace else.
Well,
And
and
some
that's
of these,
go-
near-death stories are people that have gone to hell,
yeah.
and Jesus or God came and saved them. And so it's really, really an eye-opener for people.
We've done quite a few shows, including shows with Dr. Moody on the subject. One of the most interesting ones that kind of goes along the lines of what you're saying. I'm not saying he was a bad guy, but he certainly, I think he termed it as kind of a hedonistic life that he left, or no, not hedonistic, bohemian life. He said, Howard Storm, I don't know if you're familiar with his story, but he was a man who was, an atheist, not saying atheists are bad people, but he didn't have any belief in God or anything like that. And he kind of lived life for his personal pleasure, if I understand. He was kind of like, out and about, partying, that kind of thing, not really any thought about the higher spiritual levels. And he died when he was traveling out of the country, almost uh, dying permanently, almost not coming back. And he said he had a hell-like experience and everything went totally black and he was in total isolation. And then what happened is I believe he said, and I have interviewed him, but it's been over 10 years ago. What happened to him was he started singing Jesus Loves Me, I think, from Sunday school that he learned when he was a kid. All of a sudden there came a light and things kind of worked out. He entirely changed his life. He actually ended up getting divorced. He became a minister. I mean, he did like a total 180. And I understand when it comes to NDEs, that happens to a lot of people. Not that they become a minister, but they change your life in meaningful ways for them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I did hear that story once you said that. Yeah, I remember that. One of the most shocking, near-death stories I heard, and you can look this up online. I think I seen this particular one on TikTok, but it was a gal, and she was the head of a satanic, cult, and I don't
Mhm.
remember what her title was, but something well, she ended up passing away, and she went straight to her master in hell. And, when she tells her story, the gist of it is, with all the satanic stuff she was doing, she really didn't believe in it. She didn't really realize the significance of what she was doing and what she was playing with. They would get some reactions and things like that, so they thought it was kind of fun and kind of cool and kind of edgy, not
Right.
realizing they were really playing with demonic forces. And so when she passed, she went there. And
Wow.
with the grace of God, she started to pray and beg, and he saved her, and she now spends the rest of her life teaching the word of God. And that's what
Yeah.
happens to a lot. They really end up realizing that, yeah, they are given a second chance, and that second chance is clean up your shit, man. You need to be a better person. You need to be kind. You need to love all of God's children. So it's just really wonderful to see people that have this experience and that they're saved, because there's a lot that aren't saved.
So you're an evidential psychic medium. Can you talk to us about what that means? How you define it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So I'm a little different than some. So I'm an evidential psychic medium, which means that I can get detailed evidence in a reading or when I'm working with the police or the FBI in cases. I can see the detail, like I can see spinning what looks like keys in this hand, and I can see he's got what looks like a busted off liquor bottle in the other hand. I can see that he's got a chain hooking from his belt to his wallet. So I can kind of get those level of detail, and so that's really, really helpful when we're working on cases. So most people don't realize that, there's a big difference between a psychic and a medium. So there's people that are a little intuitive, right? A little, where everybody's actually a little intuitive. You might be driving home from work one day and you thought, I'm going to take this exit instead. And then you get home and you turn on the news and you realize, holy Toledo, your normal path home, there was a major car accident. You'd still be sitting there. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So everybody kind of has that inner voice, whether or not we listen to it is another story. But then you got people that are sensitive, right? Where they kind of feel the environment that they kind of walk into. And then you got the impasse. And those really, I'm an impasse. So you feel what other people are feeling, whether you want to or not. And so that's always very interesting. But then you've got the psychics, and then there's some that are a little stronger than others, and some might use tarot cards or pendulums or something like that. And then some can be really, really strong, powerful psychics, which is great, where you'll give premonitions and things like that. So, and then there's mediumship. And in mediumship, there's a whole nother range of mediumship abilities. So some can hear, some can feel, some get a knowing, some can taste. So I have all of those. So I do hear, smell, taste, feel when I'm giving people readings. So that's kind of the crux of it, what the difference is.
Now, how did you decide to examine this idea of orbs and using photography to capture these spirits and orbs? How did that occur to you to go down that path?
Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. I'm not an author and I never planned to put a book together. But Spirit had other plans for me.
Mhm.
So Spirit made the whole thing happen. So they told me I was going to be writing a book and I'm like, "No." no, that's not really my thing. And next thing I know, I'm getting nothing but emails and text messages and stuff I watch online. All of a sudden, here comes up another ad for a free writing course. And it just kept on and on and on every day for a couple of weeks until finally I gave in. I said, okay, I'll write the book. What am I writing about? And then they told me and provided the evidence for me that I have the ability to capture spirits and interdimensional beings on camera. And it all happened because I was falling asleep one night. And when you're not awake and you're not asleep, you're in this zone.
Right.
And that's kind of like Twilight Zone where it's the easiest for spirits to get a hold of you. Well, I'm actually having an experience. I'm falling asleep in bed and I realize I'm being transported someplace and I could see the beings were on the side of me. Next thing I know, my husband, because he was downstairs watching TV, he comes barging into the bedroom and goes, "Oh my God, look what just set off the surveillance camera." And right outside our bedroom window, which was about 2, 3 feet from literally where I was laying in bed, there was a gigantic orb with an image inside hovering right outside the window. And as he's yelling, "Oh my gosh, look what just set off the alarm," I realized I was coming back into my body. I wasn't in it. And so that kind of started the whole thing. Till now, I capture some crazy, crazy things every day, wherever I go. But I get so many of them, I kind of put together this little cheat sheet. I don't know if you can see it very well here,
Yeah, we can
but
see it.
they're
If
in
you're watching
categories.
on video, you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I put them in categories because there's so many different kinds. And at first, I just thought they were all spiritual, but I've come to realize a lot of them are interdimensional. And if you're watching this whole stuff going online, I guess mainstream news isn't touching it. But if you go online, you're going to learn about a lot about the UAP and UFO and David Grush and all these other people. They don't refer to them as aliens or ET.
Non-human intelligences,
They
non-human
call it
intelligence.
interdimensional beings. And it's because, they've advanced. Some of these planets and some of these, beings are millions of years old, way more advanced than we are. And they become very spiritual. And so it's so interesting to listen to. And so I don't know if you follow any of the Area 51 stuff and Bob Lazar stuff, but he came out with, decades ago, he started, of course, he was shamed and ridiculed and everything else, but he basically found a whole book binder full of it. I don't remember how many pages or chapters was it, but lots, all about religion from the aliens, what the aliens told us back in the 1940s and 50s about our religion. And the guy interviewing him was like, "Well, you need to tell more." He goes, "No, no, I don't want to go into that." He's like, he literally forced him. And I put it out on my social media page. I found the interview and
Oh,
I put it
wow.
out there for people to say. But he basically says kind of what I've been saying. And I don't know, we were talking before, and I give this analogy. My soul is currently in this vessel. I have blonde hair and I'm a white woman. Okay. I drive a white SUV, but eventually that SUV is going to have too many miles on it, or it's going to end up in a fender bender and it's going to end up in the heap yard or the scrap yard. I
Right.
still exist, but now I without a ride. So I've got to get myself a new ride. Well, our souls are in this vessel to have this earthly experience, right? Eventually, this vessel is going to get too many miles on it, or I'm going to end up in an accident and it's going to end up in a cemetery. My soul still exists, but now I no longer have a vehicle to travel in. And that's why I'm able to get these. These are what our souls look like if we aren't contained in a container. Well, Bob Lazar's big secret revelation from the aliens, ETs, interdimensional beings, what they had told our government was that our bodies are nothing more than containers to
Hmm.
hold our souls.
Yeah,
And
that
we're
makes a lot of
afraid to
sense to
let
me.
that out, that it will destabilize society and church and religion as a whole. But NASA did a study on this several decades ago already. What would happen to people and their belief system if they knew aliens, ETs, interdimensional beings existed? Because our government said it would deravel it, it would fall apart. And NASA did this big study on it and discovered actually it was the opposite. More
Hmm.
people gravitated back to church. And it's
Hmm.
because these are spiritual beings, right? And I remind people, we had a cadet we sponsored, and I just love the guy. And he had a belief system, and we were talking about, life in the universe and ETs and all that. And he says, well, Mama Sue, the cadets would call me Mama Sue. And they say, well, Mama
Mhm.
Sue, if you believe in aliens, then you don't believe in God. And I said, honey,
Hmm.
honey, I was born Catholic, I'll die Catholic. But go back to your Bible, because it does not say God just created all life on earth. He created all life in the universe.
Mhm.
And maybe some of it he created way before us.
Could be. Could be. Now, and I think that's really interesting because it occurs to me, and I just interviewed Dr. Jacques Vallée a few days ago. I don't know when this is going to air exactly, but I interviewed him in mid-February. And, he's legendary in the UFO field. One of the greatest researchers. In fact, one of the characters of Close Encounters of the Third Kind was based on him. So he's been doing this for decades. And I think that most people come to the UFO question with a very kind of extraterrestrial view, hypothesis. But I think as time goes on, and those of us who have been reading about this for years and looking at it, that there appears to be some kind of spiritual aspect to it, and it's not as simple as little green men, I guess is what I'm saying. There's a lot more going on, and what you talk about us being containers for souls, well, I think that fits in pretty well with the world's religions, right? I mean, the idea is we have a soul. To me, that's reassuring.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to think, if I live my 70, if I make it that far, or even maybe further if I'm lucky, I'd still like to think that that's not the end. Now, I guess maybe some people are comforted by that. I don't know how, but to me, I would like to think that we're going on. So if this is merely my SUV, as it were, my body, first of all, they could have got me a nicer SUV. But anyway, no. But the point is, the point is that to me, it's a really comforting thing to know that we go on. I would think to me that's a positive.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, what I think is so rewarding is when I have somebody come for a reading and I can bring their loved one through for them with amazing detail. There's it takes the most hardened skeptic and it leaves them speechless. So I love it when someone drags a loved one with to the reading, that doesn't believe in it, and then they leave just, you know, truly in shock. I had one
Yeah,
guy, he came in and he
right.
kept his sunglasses on, he walked right past me, and he went back and took the chair at the far back corner of the room because this was full of crap, and he isn't hearing having it, and he's forced to come and against his will until his son stepped forward,
Mm,
and everything changed.
yeah.
And the man couldn't stop wiping tears from his eyes. And when he left,
Aw,
said, "Can I give you a hug goodbye?" And he said, "Yeah." And he was just trembling. He just didn't
wow.
know that that could happen.
What do those on the other side, what do they say? What do they tell you?
I glad you asked that. So on our side, the number one thing people are most concerned about is, are they okay? What are they doing? You know what I mean?
Sure.
And concerned about that transition from this life, their physical life back into spirit. Was it painful? Were they alone? Were they scared? And the thing I love about spirit is a couple of things. Number one, they could care less about what you did for the funeral. They don't care. They might have been vain when they were alive and they said, I want all these roses and I want that kind of casket and I want that. Once they are on the other side, they don't care. They don't care what outfit you put them in. They don't care about how many flowers were there. They do often come to their funerals only because it's like all their favorite people are in one spot at one time, not because they're trying to
Aw,
judge anybody or because they're trying to scrutinize what someone said or what somebody brought or anything. It's nothing like that at all. They really let go of all of the anger and the resentment and their pettiness and their obsession with material objects. None of that means anything anymore. It's just all about the love. And one thing that they will say sometimes is they do sometimes have regret of a couple of things, actually. One is they didn't tell their loved ones that they loved them enough or at all.
Mm,
And they're very sorry for that. They realize our existence here on this planet really is all about the love and not about the material things, not climbing the corporate ladder. It's all about helping thy neighbor, thy brother, really. We're all God's children, right? Moving forward and advancing. So that is like one of the biggest regrets they have. And they'll come through with that. But they also regret not making the most of their life. When they were here, going out sightseeing, spending more time with family and friends, that kind of stuff.
right. Yeah, it's amazing, and I can only imagine, being a parent and losing a child. What a horrible thing. So to be able to reset that connection and to
Or to
kind of
find
bring
out
that
why they
evidence.
committed suicide, right? So many
Mm,
parents are just left scratching their heads going, why, why, why? And when they come
mm,
through in a reading and can explain why, it really heals the heart. People then can move on.
mhm, mhm. Yes, that's so sad. I also always, when that comes up, 988, the suicide hotline, available 24/7, 365. So if you find yourself in crisis or a loved one, please use that line. We need you here. We need you here. Suzanne, now I have to admit, when it comes to orbs, when I hear that, sometimes I get a little skeptical because I see these little dust particles and things. But that's not really what you're talking about, is it? You're talking about different kind of orbs, aren't you?
Yeah, in fact, I talk about that in my book. I actually show examples of what dust looks like, what, rain would look like, what like backscatter looks like. And you can even get backscatter underwater, where you're like, oh, these orbs are underwater. No, it's backscatter. So there's a lot you have to learn. And I truly have taken thousands of photos and videos and kind of taught myself the difference. And it was because I debunked everything. I was trying to debunk all my stuff. Like it could be this. Well, maybe it could be that. And so I talk about that in the book as well, is how do you tell what's really spiritual versus what's maybe environmental, right? Dust particles. Like if you're taking pictures in an older structured house, barn, building of some sort, there's going to be a lot of particles in the air. So you have to be very discerning about that. Well, how do you tell the difference, right? Because a lot of them are round, but
Mhm.
the majority of what I get, as well, as not round at all. They're very unique shapes and designs and colors. And I've gotten to the point too where I interact with them. And I can pull some stuff up to show you if you want me to share them. Elsewise, they can check them out on my YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff, TikTok. I put them out there. But I have one where we were in a park as well, and with a friend of mine and my
Mhm.
husband. And I could see the spirits flying around. And I didn't have my camera ready, and so I grabbed it again. I said, "Okay, go back by my friend. Go by my friend so I can get a picture of you with her." And the thing went right in front of her face, and then flew right at the camera lens. It's
Wow.
really amazing. And then on New Year's Eve, it would have been kind of quiet in our house. I mean, I had a few spirits here and there, but normally there's quite a few at night, and it was only maybe one or two, except for New Year's Eve. I went to my bedroom at 10 at night. I don't really stay up to see the new year, but I felt a lot of energy in the room. So I grabbed out my video camera and there was a party going on. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Wow, you all waited for tonight to come. And so I started filming. And for anybody that says that's not true, again, I put it all out online. You can look at it. And so I started filming. I said, okay, if any of my family or friends are here, will you come in blue? Because they're all like mainly white shapes flying around. So will you come in the color blue? And I got two spirits in blue. So then I said, okay, I know some of you are interdimensional, aren't you? Will you come in like green? Will you come and show up in green so I know that you're different? You're interdimensional? Yeah, two of them flashed in neon green.
Wow. That's pretty cool. So why do you think they come here in the form of orbs? Do you think it's for different reasons? Why do they present themselves this way? I mean, I could imagine some people saying, well, if this is a spirit I know, why don't they just pop up in full body apparition mode? Why do they come as an orb? Why do they choose the form of an orb, do you think?
Well, as a medium, I can see spirits sometimes literally standing there, like my father standing
Hmm.
right there. I can see through them, but I can see them just like there. But for the majority of it, when you're capturing on video, we are energy. right? There's energy in the ground. Tesla proved that. We know there's energy in the air. We can't see radio waves or marker waves, but we know they're there. We too are energy, and that's what they manifest back into. So they don't have a form. However, I will tell you, they can share their energy with animals.
Hmm.
It's not that they become an animal, but they can share themselves with animals. And so I talk a little bit about that in the book, and I can explain what I mean if you want right now as well. But so that's really cool that you can share your energy. And so I think, in fact, one of the coolest spirits I ever got. I went to a plane crash
Oh
in
my.
Colorado Springs,
Hmm.
south of Colorado Springs, actually, United Flight 585. And I went there to pay my respects one night, and I asked for some of those spirits if they wanted to come forward to tell me the story to come forward. And two did. First, it was a businessman, a bigger frame businessman, and he was on a trip. The other was the adorable little old lady. And I fly occasionally, and I've always wondered what would that be like to be on an airplane knowing it's going to go
Sure.
down.
Yeah,
Oh my
terrifying.
gosh!
I
I
would
mean, you're
think.
at 10,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 1,000 feet, 500 feet. So I asked her, and what she told me literally blew my socks off. And she said it was joyous. And I
Huh.
thought, what? Huh? Uh, Can you explain? Why would you say that? And she says, we all went together before the plane ever hit impact. The souls all left the body before they hit impact. And when they arrived, there was a big family reunion. All everybody's friends and family were there. She says, my husband was there waiting for me, and it was joyous. And
Huh.
I thought, wow.
Wow.
So I took out my camera, just my cell phone, and I started taking pictures. And I was certain I had her, but when I first looked at the picture later, I'm like, oh my gosh! I guess I looked at my phone, and of course the screen on the phone's pretty small. But I
Sure.
thought I swear I had her. So this is the photo,
Okay. And
and
folks, if you're
she's not
listening
really
for
in there,
those,
right?
right,
And it wasn't
those
until a couple
listening.
days later. Pardon?
Mhm. I said those listening who don't see the video, because we do have a large audio audience, Suzanne was holding up a picture. Yes. But
Yes,
go
and
ahead.
in the very corner, right here, in the very very corner of the picture, is this.
Oh,
This is her
wow.
energy.
Yeah,
And if
this is
that isn't
kind of a
angelic
human
looking,
figure
I
almost.
don't know what is.
Wow.
Yeah, she looks truly like an angel in that
Yeah.
shot. Honestly, I've got thousands of pictures and videos. That is the prettiest one to date. Now, when I
Wow,
was in
that is
Cripple Creek,
something else.
Colorado, I was taking some pictures and video, and this old grumpy miner tried to scare me. And as he flew by, he looked very ghostly, like the typical ghost you would see in a haunted
Mhm.
movie. He looked just like that. I just laughed. I'm like, you don't scare me. I know exactly who you are. But they come in all shapes and sizes, and it just depends, I think, on the type of energy they are.
Mhm.
Right? Are they animal? Are they human? Are they interdimensional? And how long they've been in spirit, how strong their energy is. I think there's a lot of variables that go into it.
You mentioned animal, and I know you mentioned before how they share their spirit. So, obviously, you believe that animals go on as well, which is, I think, a great comfort to those who have had pets and so forth throughout our lives. You always want to believe that they go on because they do become members of the family, no question. In fact, our 2 dogs were groomed today, so, given the royal treatment. But the point is that they are very important to us. So can you talk about their roles, how they go on, and this idea of sharing their souls, sharing their spirit?
Oh, absolutely. And it is true, they do that. I was giving a gala reading once, and at the end of the reading, I was telling the son in spirit, you should hang out with your mom more if you can, give her a sign. She really misses you. And this is when he told me, I am always with my mama. And he showed me this little brown bird. And I thought, what? And so I asked her, I said, your son's telling me that he used to call you mama. And she goes, yeah, both my son and my daughter call me that. And I said, well, your son's telling me that he's always with you every day. And he showed me this little brown bird. I said, but
Hmm.
didn't you tell me you lived in New York City? And she goes, we moved from New York City a year ago to the country. And here's the thing. She said, every morning I'd go out on my porch to drink my cup of coffee. And this little brown bird would show up and sit on the railing and just talk, 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 talk. She goes, I assumed it was someone's pet bird. I said, no, it's actually your son. He's sharing his energy with the bird. I said, in fact, your son tells me that he sits on the tree branch, and it's not like an evergreen tree, it's a leafy tree, and he can look in your house and watch you. And she goes, oh my gosh. Yeah, oh my God. And then she just lost it. She goes, yes, yes,
Oh,
I see him there all the time. I just don't know why he wouldn't go home. I said, that's because your son has shared his energy with the birds. So it allows him to actually hang out around you. And it's not the first one. A girlfriend of mine called me one day going, Suzanne, I was with my folks this weekend and we were in this place and then this animal thing happened. And I think it was my brother. Will you ask him? And so I went into meditation for her and he said, yeah, he shared his energy with a hawk and he dive bombed over them. They were outside like in a park. And so I called her back and told her, she goes, that's exactly what happened. We were outside in a park with this hawk came and dive bombed right over us. And I said it was my brother. And I said it was. So they can do that. And your loved ones too, your pets, they go on. In fact, I have pictures of our duck truffles flying around through our bedroom, flying out around
oh.
our house. And they come through in readings. So, years ago, was it in the 90s where the animal whisperer thing happened? Was that in the 90s? Do you remember?
I think so.
Something like that. Anyways, I didn't believe it. Honestly, I really didn't believe it until they started jumping into my readings. And I'm like, oh, hello. Okay. If you hear from my client, I'll let her know. And they always have been spot on readings from my clients. So your animals even are very much around you now, even in spirit. They do that.
That's cool. There
Mhm.
was actually a story on my campfire show I wanted to share, and it it revolved around butterflies though. But I thought maybe you'd find it interesting. What happened is my caller, she was probably, it sounded like she was about 18, 19 years old. She worked, her parents had a car lot. They sold cars, a car dealership. And her job was to go in the morning and check all the cars. And she went out and she found this monarch butterfly dead on the ground and she started bawling and crying and she couldn't figure out why. She went in with her mom and her mom's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Everything's okay." But this girl couldn't figure out why she was crying so much. So just then they get a call that the grandfather, who had been in the hospital, but they didn't consider it anything, super critical. He'd been having some health issues, but it wasn't anything dangerous, they didn't think, that he was very close to death. So the mom ran out and the girl behind locked everything up and so forth. And I can't remember if she made it to the hospital or she didn't. She was driving, they drove separately. And, but then after her grandfather dies, she goes home and she goes up in her room and she's mad at the world and people are already starting to bring food in and things. She said, I'm going to go for a drive. So basically, what she does is she ends up going for a drive for like a half hour and she doesn't even know where she's at, right? A place she doesn't remember ever going. She went to this park and she sat on a bench and this swarm of monarch butterflies came all around her in her hair, everywhere. And she never saw anything like this before. And she felt that was her grandpa. And the weird thing she'll say is that now, even when it's wintertime, occasionally she'll see her and her mom will see a little butterfly floating by. So, I mean, it very much kind of maps to what you were talking about.
Absolutely, and it's beautiful when they do that. They can easily share their energy with the dragonfly, with anything really if they want to. I've never ever heard of any spirit jumping someone from the spirit world jumping and talking to another other than me, when I'm giving a reading, they'll talk and move through me, but I mean, as a general whole, they don't jump into somebody else's body when there's a soul in there. But if there's a bird or an animal or a cat or a dog, even, yeah, absolutely, they can do that.
I'm sure there's somebody out there watching or listening who is dealing with grief. And it's one of the most terrible things. You talked about somebody who lost a child, and that's maybe the worst thing that can happen to you in life, that, your child precedes you in physical death. But with grief in general, what do you say to the grieving? Because it's hard. I mean, I think most of us, particularly who have reached a certain age, have grieved, have lost loved ones, and so forth. But still, yeah, you're not in that particular relationship. What do you tell people, and how do you tell people or suggest that they try to deal with grief?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I have come to learn from the people that have passed into spirit what they've told me to tell their family members. And I too have lost a daughter. My first husband's deceased, and my father's deceased. I
I'm
have
sorry.
a lot of people around me that have passed away. So I've got a lot of experience with that, which I think helps me relate to those people and the people in spirit, just because, it's hard to walk the walk, hard to talk the talk if you haven't walked the walk kind of deal.
Right.
So,
Right.
but spirit in general will tell them, they got to get on with their life. And so the bottom line is, if you are willing to die for them, which many of us, I mean, that those stages of grief, those 5 stages of grief where you get to the point where you're willing to deal with God, just take my life, let them live. For a lot of us, we've got there and we've been suicidal and everything else just because, our life ends when our loved one passes from us. And the best thing I can tell you is if you're willing to die for them, you need to be willing to live for them because they're actually not gone. In fact, I cannot tell you how many times the spirit will talk about the bucket list or a vacation they had planned, but now, the survivor isn't going to go on it. And the person in spirit's like, yes, you are. You need to go on it. We planned this trip. I'm going to be with you. You need to go on this trip so that one day when you go back into spirit form, we can talk about this amazing vacation. Or this one young man, his cousin, um, had passed and they used to always go fishing together. And he says, yeah, I'm never going to do that. I might as well sell the poles. And their loved one in spirit's like, what are you talking about? Tell them, no, go get the tackle ready. I'll be out there with the fishing hole and make sure you bring my pole with. And so they very much want you to continue to live your life. In fact, one of the most shocking ones that I gave this gal a reading. It was a combo reading. I was with James Van Prague, and we were doing this big reading by Zoom. It was during COVID, and I had brought forward this gal's daughter who had committed suicide. And it was an amazing reading, and she explained why she did it. And the mother and father never understood why. And she explained everything, which was amazing. About a year went by, and she reached out to me again. She goes, it took me this long to find your contact information. She goes, and come to find out, she lived in like the next big city in our state. I live in Colorado Springs. She lived in Denver. Of all the places in the world, that person lived just, 45 minutes to an hour away. So she came for another reading, wanted to talk to her daughter again, and her daughter stepped forward for her. But this time, the daughter gave her some hard advice, hard, tough love. She says, you tell my mother, I'm done now. I'm pulling back. And I said, what?
Wow.
What do you mean? And she goes, I'm all done. She goes, because I committed suicide, I have caused my mother to go into this tailspin. She goes, I cannot stand and watch her in agony, uh, in pain, agony, in pain every day. And I know it's my fault. She refuses to get on with her life. You've told her it repeatedly. Other people have told her repeatedly, and she refuses. So you need to tell her, I'm pulling back. I'm done. I went,
Wow.
oh, wow. Uh, okay. I'm just a messenger. I have a job to do. So I told the mom that. And of course, she was in shock and in tears, but she understood. And then she called for another reading like a month or so later. I said, no, we're done. We're done. Your daughter has made it crystal clear. I'm not going to bring her through again. So now fast forward about 6 months. And she calls me and she says, can I please have another reading? And I said, we've talked about this. She goes, no, 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 no. Please, please, please. This time, really, really, please. And I said, okay. So she came down to my office. As soon as I opened the door, her energy was off the chart and glowing, beaming, just beautiful. And I said, oh my, we have much to talk about. And she let me know how she got back on with her life. And then she said, well, my daughter, please come back to me now. And of course, the daughter was standing right there. And
Wow.
her daughter gave her a big hug and said, I actually never left.
Wow.
But you
She
needed to
just gave her,
understand, I'm all
yeah.
done talking to you until you get together. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it was kind of this tough love that the mom had to hear to finally get off the couch, go back to work, get back with her friends, get back in society, have a life, live a life, because that's what they want. Because you have to remember, in the spirit world, there's no time. So to them, you're going to be there tomorrow. We
Right.
have time on earth that keeps us moving forward, hours, minutes, seconds, weeks, all that kind of stuff. There isn't there. So even if you live for 100 years in this lifetime, it's really kind of equivalent to a week vacation. And some
Yeah.
of us, take very wild vacations. I mean, we know when we go on vacation, someone's going to need band-aids at the very least, because we're all about the scuba diving and the zip lining and the ATVing and all that kind of adventure stuff. Well, yeah, it's hard. Sometimes it's painful. You're going to get rope burns if you're zip line. I mean, but that's what we want, right? Other souls just want to come, read a book, have an easy life, you know. And so you'll see some people that just kind of skate through life, no real highs, ups, or lows, right? There's nothing really big going on. And then you have other people like myself where it's like, my God, what's going to fall in today? You know what I mean? But I signed up for that. And so did other people. So everybody wanted a certain type of experience in this lifetime. And as you know, we have a big shift happening right now in the world. There's a real
Hmm.
battle between good and evil taking place. It's huge, right? We, the good is
There's
winning
a
out,
lot
but
going on.
there is a lot going on, and you need to stay positive, stay in the light, right? Stay optimistic because there is going to be a day of reckoning, right? There's going to be a whole lot of things that are going to come to light. I one friend of mine, I said in the beginning of last year, I said, "Oh my God, hang on for the ride." And she thought I meant with her life, literally. I said, no, no, no. I'm just talking life here on earth is going to go in for a ride and it's just ramping up. And I didn't even understand the magnitude of it either, just that spirit shared that with me. And so look what's happening, right? The, the
Hmm.
the the mainstream media is trying to keep all the spirituality out of it, and they're trying to keep the interdimensional being. They're trying to not go there, but they're here. Everybody can look out their house now and pretty much see something anomalous in the sky.
There's something going on, and I don't think it was just FAA sanctioned drones. I think we're getting only a little bit of the story. I think there's a lot more to it. But certainly, you want to pick up on this story. There is No Death, Evidence of the Spirit World by Suzanne Arens, Spirits and Orbs. And we're so glad to have had her with us today. Suzanne, where can people find the book and get into everything you do?
Oh, thank you, Jim. Yeah, it's available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Basically, any online book retailer has it available. I think you can even order it through Walmart.com or my website. You can go to crystalpeakmedium.com. You can buy the book there. In fact, if you buy it through the website, I actually power up with and meditate with a crystal for you. And so anybody that orders from my website gets a extra bonus gift for that and an autograph book on the website as well. So they can get multiple different ways. And if you want to see some of this amazing evidence, honestly, go to all my social media, follow me online, go to my website. Um, you'll see all the latest, greatest. There's no strings attached for any of it. And in fact, though, if you buy the book, in the back of the book is a QR code, and it
Oh,
will take you
cool.
to a hidden web page where you'll see a
Ooh,
lot of the videos the pictures came from. So I have over 70 some pictures in this book, and a lot of those came out of video, and you'll get access to that if you have the book. And in the back of the book, there's a bonus section that will actually teach you step by step how to capture the evidence yourself.
excellent. Suzanne Arens, thank you so much for joining us today on the program Continued Success.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor.
And thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it very much. If you're listening on audio, thank you very much. If you see this on video and enjoyed this, we have great guests. Now, me, I don't know so much about, but the guests are fantastic, and we do it every week. So make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're watching. Hit that notification bell and share the show with your friends online and off. Text them a link. Put it on Reddit. Put it on Facebook. Put it on Insta. All the places. And that's how we get a bigger audience and greater community. And I appreciate it very much. We'll talk to you next time. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye bye.